Welcome to the Deep Dive. You're here because, well, you want to get a real handle on important stuff, right? Cut through the noise and understand what truly matters.
And that's our mission, too, giving you the core insights you need in a way that sticks and maybe even makes you smile.
So today, we're plunging into a book that's become, well, kind of a leadership Bible in many circles, far beyond its military origins, really.
Yeah. Extreme Ownership, How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win. Our source is the book itself, written by former Navy SEAL officers Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. And they basically take their intense combat experiences and, translate them into powerful lessons for leading in pretty much any environment.
Exactly. What grabbed me right away was their kind of down-to-earth approach.
Yeah.
This isn't about battlefield bravado,
Right.
It's fundamentally about how teams function. Right in the preface, they say, the sum is far greater than the parts.
Think about that.
Yeah. These are guys who've been through some of the most demanding training out there, yet their focus is squarely on team dynamics, collective success, and, learning from when they messed up.
That's a really crucial point. They actually talk about being sort of reluctant at first about writing a SEAL memoir.
Oh, really?
Yeah, their motivation came from wanting to distill these incredibly valuable leadership lessons they'd learned, not just from winning, but maybe even more importantly, from their failures.
Right.
They applied these principles, training other SEALs, saw them work in the, brutal reality of combat, and then saw the exact same principles drive success in the business world. That consistency, that's what makes it so compelling.
It really does. And to, grasp the weight of these ideas, they drop us right into the thick of it. The Battle of Ramadi in Iraq.
Yeah, talk about high stakes.
Seriously. They paint this vivid picture of just absolute chaos, the classic fog of war, right?
Yeah.
Thick with confusion, constant danger, facing this relentless enemy they call the Muj.
Which is short for Mujahideen, the insurgent fighters.
Right. It was in that intense environment that their core understanding of leadership was really forged.
Yeah.
So let's just get straight to it. What's the very first big idea from the book we can actually use?
Okay, let's dive into the bedrock principle, extreme ownership. Simply put, it means that as a leader, you are ultimately accountable for absolutely everything your team does or fails to do.
No passing the buck.
Zero. No excuses.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. They hit you with this really powerful statement, something like this.
It's extreme ownership requires leaders to look at an organization's problems through the objective lens of reality, without emotional attachments to agendas or plans. It mandates that a leader set ego aside, accept responsibility for failures, attack weaknesses, and consistently work to build a better and more effective team.
That's pretty uncompromising. Takes the ego right out of it.
It is. And they show this with a really stark example from training SEAL platoons. During these intense simulations, that included the nightmare scenario of fratricide-friendly fire incident.
Oof, yeah.
Some commanders would instinctively, blame their subordinates. He didn't follow orders or whatever.
A blame game.
Exactly. But the leaders who really got extreme ownership, they did the opposite. They took complete responsibility, full stop.
Wow.
They understood the burden of command, that ultimately it was on them to make sure their teams were properly trained, briefed, operating effectively. It wasn't about deflecting blame. It was asking, what could I have done differently to prevent this?
So, okay, for someone listening right now, how do you take this, incredibly potent idea and make it work day to day, not just in the military or big business?
Well, the first truly actionable step is self-reflection. Think back to a time when maybe a project didn't quite land or a personal goal fell short.
Happens to everyone.
Right. And your first impulse might have been to point fingers, The market shifted, my colleague dropped the ball, I didn't have enough time.
Yeah, the usual excuses.
But extreme ownership challenges you to dig deeper. Ask, okay, what could I have done better? Maybe my communication wasn't clear enough. Maybe I didn't foresee that roadblock. Maybe I didn't give the right support.
It's not about beating yourself up, though, is it?
No, not at all. It's about identifying your leverage points for next time. Even if you weren't the one doing every single task, a leader looks at how they set the conditions for success or failure.
Right.
Taking this kind of ownership, even for things that seem outside your direct control, it's incredibly empowering because it puts you back in the driver's seat to make changes.
They share that story about the VP whose plan went sideways, right?
Oh.
His first reaction was blame.
Yeah, he blamed his distribution managers. The plan failed, must be their fault.
So what was the advice?
The crucial advice was, At the next board meeting, you need to stand up and own this failure.
Ouch. That's tough.
It is, and the book really stresses just saying the words, I take responsibility, isn't enough. You have to genuinely understand how your leadership contributed.
Right, you have to believe it.
Exactly. This VP had to confront his own assumptions, maybe his communication style, perhaps even how he picked those managers in the first place.
So what happened?
By setting his ego aside, accepting responsibility, even though it was probably painful, he actually impressed the board.
Really?
Yeah. They saw a leader willing to learn, focused on solutions, not excuses. And ultimately, that shift allowed for an honest look at what went wrong and how to fix it. It turned a potential blame game into a productive problem-solving session.
That's a fantastic illustration. Taking ownership, even when it's hard, builds trust and actually leads to better results. Okay, so we embrace extreme ownership. What's the next big principle that builds on this accountability?
The next one is equally impactful, maybe a little provocative. No bad teams, only bad leaders.
Ooh, okay. That sounds like a strong statement.
It is. But they back it up with this really compelling story from BADS, basic underwater demolition SEAL training.
Yeah, notoriously difficult stuff, the crucible, right?
Absolutely. Designed to test the absolute limits of teamwork and resilience under insane stress.
So tell us about these boat crews. You hear about Hell Week.
Exactly. During Hell Week, which is arguably the toughest part, trainees are in these small boat crews. And one crew, Boat Crew the 6th, was just consistently bombing every challenge. Dead last. Their leader was quick to find fault. He blamed it on, being assigned the weak guys, the less capable trainees. He'd basically written them off.
So he blamed the team.
Totally. But then you had Boat Crew 6. They were crushing it. High-performing, winning challenges under what seemed like really strong leadership.
So did the instructors just say, well, tough luck for Boat Crew 6?
No way.
Whoa.
The SEAL instructors, being masters of leadership development, they did an experiment. They simply swapped the leaders. The leader from the winning Boat Crew the 2nd took over the losing Boat Crew the 6th, and vice versa.
What happened?
The results were immediate and dramatic. Boat Crew the 6th, the supposedly bad team under the new leader, they started improving significantly almost right away, and they kept improving.
Wow. So it really wasn't the team members themselves.
It vividly showed the direct, profound impact of leadership on a team's success, regardless of the perceived talent of the individuals.
Yeah, that really hammers the point home. The book quotes an instructor saying something like, good leaders don't make excuses.
Right?
They figure out how to get it done and win.
Exactly. The original leader of Boat Crew the 6th, he was stuck in a victim mentality, always focused on external factors, his bad team members.
Right, looking outward for blame.
Which completely prevented him and the team from looking inward, from asking, okay, how can we improve our process, our communication? He missed the chance for growth because he was too busy blaming.
And the flip side is that good leadership is contagious.
Totally. The original leader of Boat Crew to 2nd had built this culture of extreme ownership, right? Finding solutions, expecting to win. He brought that positive, proactive vibe with him to Boat Crew 6.
And what about the original leader of 6 now leading the good crew?
Well, he was forced to step up his game. But his biggest takeaway, according to the book, was seeing his old team transform under new leadership, realizing that what he thought was impossible was actually achievable with the right approach.
This really makes you think about your own experiences, doesn't it? Being on a struggling team. It's so easy to point fingers, but this forces you to ask, okay, what was the leadership dynamic like? What attitude was being set from the top?
That's the key insight for everyone listening. If you find yourself on a team that's underperforming, resist the urge to just blame your teammates' skills or attitude.
Right.
Step back. Look critically at the leadership. What tone is being set? Are excuses common? Or is the focus on solutions? Is the leader taking ownership or deflecting? This principle just highlights the huge power of a leader's attitude.
Okay, so we've got extreme ownership and the powerful idea of no bad teams, only bad leaders. What's the next essential piece for high-performing teams?
The next crucial principle is believe. Now, this might sound, almost too simple.
Like, just believe.
Yeah, sort of, but it's deeper than that. It has huge implications for how a team functions and achieves its goals. The authors introduce this by talking about their initial skepticism when they were tasked with working by, with, and through Iraqi security forces.
Right, I remember reading that. They described this huge gap between their elite SEALs and the conventional Iraqi army soldiers they had to partner with.
It was a massive difference. Training, equipment, even motivation. The SEALs were like a pro sports team, peak conditions, seamless teamwork,
Yeah.
and many of the Iraqi soldiers. Poorly equipped, inconsistent training, maybe just there for a paycheck, not always fully bought into the mission, you know?
Sounds like a recipe for challenges, let's say.
Exactly. You can imagine the initial doubt about whether effective collaboration was even possible.
So how did they bridge that gap? How did they get anyone to believe this could work?
The key insight is they had to find something to believe in, even if the initial picture wasn't ideal. They shifted focus to what they could control, how they could influence the situation. And believe isn't just about the big mission. It's believing in your specific plan, believing in your team's potential, even if it's not obvious at first, and believing success is possible, even against the odds.
And critically, the leader has to instill that belief.
Absolutely fundamental. If the leader doesn't genuinely believe in what they're asking the team to do, forget it. The team won't believe either.
They use a business example too, right? A CEO dealing with pushback on a new compensation plan.
Yeah, great example. The CEO could feel the hesitation, the lack of buy-in, no belief in the new plan.
So what did she do? Just force it through?
No, exactly the opposite. She didn't dismiss the concerns. She asked a really simple, powerful question. What don't you like about it?
Open the door.
Right. That simple act of asking, of being willing to listen, sent a huge message. Your opinions matter. We'll engage with your reservations. That open communication was the first step to building belief. When people feel heard, they start to believe their concerns matter. And maybe, just maybe, this plan can work or be adjusted to work.
And then there's that story about Gary, the superintendent, who blamed his subordinate for not following procedure. How does believe fit there?
This ties believe and extreme ownership together beautifully. Gary's first instinct, blame the subordinate. The coaching he got was, first, take ownership. This isn't his fault, it's yours.
Right, extreme ownership.
But the next step, where believe comes in, was how he should talk to the subordinate. He was told to start by acknowledging his own failure in communication.
Okay, showing belief he could have done better.
Exactly. And then, crucially, he was advised to also express belief in the subordinate's abilities, something like, you're a skilled superintendent.
Reinforcing their capability.
Yes. It completely changes the dynamic from blame to collaboration. It shows belief in the person, belief in the potential for improvement, and fosters trust.
So for someone listening, how important is it, really, to believe in what you're doing, your job, your goals?
It's absolutely foundational. Whether you're leading a team, part of one, or just pursuing a personal goal, your level of belief. It directly impacts your effort, your resilience when things get tough, and ultimately your chances of success.
And if you're a leader,
Actively cultivating that belief is one of your most critical jobs. Taking ownership, communicating clearly, making sure everyone understands the why behind their work, showing you value their contribution. When a team gets the purpose and believes they matter, they'll move mountains.
Okay, powerful stuff. Moving on from believe, let's talk about how teams actually work together. The next principle is cover and move. Sounds very military.
It is a core battlefield tactic, yeah. But the principle underneath, incredibly valuable in, well, pretty much any team setting.
So what's the core idea?
At its heart, cover and move just means all the different parts of a team have to work together, coordinate seamlessly, constantly supporting each other to achieve the overall mission. Nobody operates in a silo.
All right, makes sense. The book uses that example of the production manager blaming a subsidiary company for delays.
Yeah, that's a great one. This manager was totally focused on his own team's output. He saw the subsidiary responsible for transporting the finished product as like an external problem, an obstacle.
Not my problem, basically.
Exactly. He literally said, they aren't my problem. I've got my own team to worry about.
Ouch.
But the insight from cover and move is, hold on, both the production team and the transport subsidiary are part of the same bigger team, the corporation. They share the exact same ultimate goal, the company's success.
So the thing he saw as a problem being forced to use the subsidiary was actually the solution.
Kind of, yeah. The authors point out what he saw as the worst part, being stuck with this internal subsidiary, should have been seen as the best part, because it meant they were inherently on the same side, working towards the same goal. He just needed to shift his perspective.
So it's about widening your view beyond just your immediate team, seeing the bigger picture.
Precisely. The core of cover and move is understanding you must work collaboratively, support other parts of the larger team, all in pursuit of that common goal. The overall mission success trumps any individual team's wins or losses. Departments, supporting units, individuals, everyone needs to be ready to cover, provide support, and advance the mission together, helping each other out proactively.
This probably hits home for listeners who've dealt with, frustrating turf wars between departments.
Oh, absolutely. Or feeling like a team you depend on just doesn't get it or isn't pulling their weight.
Yeah.
Think about those situations. Were you really operating as one team with a clear, shared goal? Cover and move encourages you to think, how can I proactively support that other team we rely on? Or how can we better support the teams that rely on us? It's about fostering that interdependence.
Building bridges, not walls.
Exactly. Everyone understanding their part in the bigger machine and committed to making the whole thing work.
Okay, so we need to work together, support each other. Now let's talk complexity. In combat, or even just busy workplaces, things get complicated fast. Is it really possible to keep things simple?
The book argues that simplicity isn't just nice to have, it's absolutely essential, especially when the pressure's on and things are uncertain. They illustrate this with a situation where their initial plan for setting up a sniper overwatch position. It turned out to be way too complicated.
How so?
They picked two separate buildings, but they quickly realized splitting their small team like that across a dangerous area full of enemy fighters, it just made them too vulnerable, too complex, too risky.
So what did they do? Ditch the plan?
Not entirely. The effective solution wasn't to stubbornly try and make the complex plan work. It was to simplify. They pragmatically consolidated into the least bad option, one single, more defensible building.
So sometimes you have to sacrifice the perfect complex plan for one that's actually workable and, well, simple.
Precisely. And this idea of simplicity goes way beyond just planning. It's crucial for communication, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially in chaos.
Totally. In chaotic, fast-moving situations, clear, concise communication is paramount. They talk about using simple reference points, building numbers on the battlefield, stuff everyone understands instantly.
Makes sense. Avoid jargon.
Exactly. Complexity in communication breeds confusion, especially under stress. Simplicity means faster understanding, fewer mistakes, and ultimately more effective action.
How often do we see overly complex plans or jargon-filled emails in our own work lives?
Way too often, probably. We fall into this trap of thinking more detail equals better execution, or using fancy words makes us sound smart.
Guilty as charged sometimes.
We all are, but simple is that reminder. Clarity and conciseness are key. Can you explain your plan, your instructions, so that everyone involved gets it easily? The simpler it is, the better the chance of it actually happening correctly.
Okay, strive for simple plans, simple communication. But we all have a million things pulling at us. How do we decide what to do first and actually get it done? That brings us to prioritize and execute.
Absolutely. And pretty much any complex job or project, you're going to face tons of tasks, competing deadlines, multiple urgent priorities.
The daily reality for many.
Right. Prioritize and execute gives you a framework for cutting through that noise and focusing your energy where it counts most. The book used the example of a CEO feeling totally swamped by this endless list of strategic initiatives.
Sounds familiar. So what was the advice for this overwhelmed CEO?
It was surprisingly straightforward, but really powerful. Focus on one critical initiative at a time. Pour your energy into that one thing until it has real momentum.
Not try to juggle everything.
Exactly. The quote is something like, "My suggestion is to focus on one, and when that one is complete or at least has some real momentum, then you move on to the next one." Trying to do everything at once just dilutes your focus, your resources.
And you end up making tiny bits of progress on lots of things, but finishing nothing.
Precisely. And feeling even more overwhelmed.
It's like that old saying, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time. That's the essence of it. You need the discipline to look at all the demands, identify the absolute top priority, the one thing that will have the biggest impact, and then laser focus on driving that forward. Get it done, or get it well underway, then move to the next.
This is super practical for anyone listening looking at their own crazy to-do list.
Absolutely. How often do you feel scattered, jumping between tasks, not really finishing anything significant?
Daily.
Right. Prioritize and execute is about stepping back, identifying the most important thing right now, and hitting it hard. It dramatically boosts productivity, cuts the overwhelm, and helps you actually achieve your goals.
Okay, so prioritize, focus, execute. But you can't do everything yourself, especially in a team. That leads us to decentralized command, which sounds like empowering people, right?
And that's exactly what it is. Decentralized command recognizes that no single leader, no matter how good, can manage every single detail. especially not in dynamic, fast-changing, chaotic situations.
Hmm. Micromanagement doesn't scale.
Not at all. This principle emphasizes breaking down bigger teams into smaller, more agile units, like 4 or 5 people typically, and each of those small teams needs a clear, empowered leader.
So like a network of mini teams.
Kind of, yeah. And the glue that holds it all together, the thing that makes it work, is ensuring these junior leaders understand the big picture, the overall mission, the desired end state, what the book calls the commander's intent.
The why.
Exactly, the why. With that clear understanding, these frontline leaders can then make timely decisions for their specific area without constantly having to check back with HQ for every little thing.
They talk about learning this the hard way in MOUT, training military operations in urban terrain.
Yeah, that's a great illustration. Initially, the senior SEAL leaders tried to control everything themselves, directing every move, positioning every person, classic top-down control.
And it didn't work.
Failed spectacularly. They realized super quickly it was incredibly inefficient and just plain ineffective. No one person can process all that information and direct everyone effectively in a complex urban fight.
Right. Too much happening.
They had to learn to trust their subordinate leaders, trust them to take ownership of their small teams, understand the mission intent, and execute based on their judgment and standard procedures.
And where should these leaders physically be? Not stuck in the weeds, but not too far back either.
That's the balancing act. You need to be where you can command and control effectively. Too far forward, you get bogged down in tactical details, lose the big picture. Too far back, you lose touch, lack situational awareness to make good calls. Generally, the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle, often with the main body of your force.
Close enough to see, but able to step back.
Right, and it's not static. Good leaders move to where they're needed most at any given moment. Be flexible.
For listeners in business or other organizations, this probably resonates. Feeling stifled by micromanagers or frustrated by lack of initiative below.
Absolutely. This is all about trust, up and down the chain. As a senior leader, do you trust your people enough to make decisions based on the overall goals? And as a leader at any level, are you giving your team enough context, enough of the why, so they can make good calls and take ownership? When you get decentralized command right, you get more agility, faster decisions, more engagement, a much more effective organization.
Okay, empowered teams, decentralized command. Now, how do we make sure everyone's actually aligned and moving together? That's where the plan principle comes in, I guess.
Absolutely. Plan stresses just how crucial thorough, meticulous preparation is. It's the foundation for anything successful. The book uses the example of planning a really high-stakes hostage rescue mission.
Yeah, talk about needing a good plan. Consequences are huge. What were the key parts of their planning?
Several things stood out. First, gathering detailed, accurate intel, analyzing every scrap of information.
Know the situation.
Second, exploring multiple different courses of action, weighing the pros and cons of each potential approach. Don't just fall in love with plan A.
Right, have options.
And third, crucially, delegating parts of the planning down the chain as much as possible, getting input from the frontline troops who will actually do the mission.
Why is that so important?
Huge for buy-in. If they have ownership of even small parts of the plan, they're more invested. Plus, they often have ground-level insights senior leaders might miss. It leads to better plans and better execution.
Makes sense. And what about the brief itself? A plan's no good if nobody understands it. What makes it a successful brief?
A successful brief ensures everyone involved the team, any supporting elements clearly understands the overall strategic mission, the commander's intent, that desired end state again, their team's specific mission, their individual roles, and really importantly, contingencies.
What happens if things go wrong? Plan B, Plan C.
Exactly. The acid test is simple. Can everyone articulate the key points of the plan? Is anything unclear? And having those contingency plans worked out beforehand is vital for dealing with inevitable curveballs.
They also mentioned how their actual briefing style changed, moving away from massive PowerPoints.
Yeah, they learned less is more. They shifted from these huge slide-heavy decks to simpler, more interactive formats.
Like what?
More use of physical maps, hand-drawn sketches on whiteboards, getting the troops who owned parts of the plan to brief their sections.
More engagement.
Totally. It sparked more questions, clarified ambiguities, and led to much deeper understanding and buy-in across the board. The focus became real comprehension, not just a slick presentation.
So for listeners, how inclusive and clear are your planning processes? Does everyone really get it?
Good question to ask. Think about your last big project. Did everyone truly understand the goals, their role, what to do if things went sideways? Plan encourages you to make planning more collaborative, delegate effectively, and ensure your communication is crystal clear and drives real alignment.
Okay, we've talked about leading your own team, but the book also really emphasizes lead up and down the chain. What does leading up actually mean?
Leading up is so critical, but often overlooked. It's about proactively communicating with and, yeah, strategically influencing your own bosses.
Not just taking orders.
Right. It's about giving your leaders the information they need, timely, relevant, clear info, so they can make good decisions that support your team's mission. It's also about understanding their world, their priorities, and framing your updates and requests in a way that makes sense to them.
There's that anecdote where one of the authors got really frustrated with higher HQ, asking what seemed like dumb questions during planning.
Yeah, totally relatable. He was venting to Jocko about these seemingly obvious or counterproductive questions from the commanders.
Wasting time.
That's how it felt. But Jocko's advice was brilliant. Shift your perspective. Focus on giving the CO the specific info and context that puts him in his comfort zone, that builds his confidence in your plan.
Anticipate their concerns.
Exactly. By proactively addressing potential worries clearly and concisely, they streamlined approvals and got their missions done more effectively. It's about understanding your boss's needs and making their job easier, which helps everyone.
And leading down the chain is more than just giving orders.
Way more. It's about constantly communicating the why, connecting the daily tasks your team does to the bigger strategic goals, the overall mission.
Keeping them connected to the purpose.
Yes. When people understand how their work fits in, how it contributes value, they're far more engaged, motivated, effective. It means getting out there, talking face to face, listening to their challenges, making sure they truly grasp the commander's intent.
So clear, consistent communication both ways, up and down, is absolutely key. Okay, now in dynamic situations, you don't always have perfect info before you act. That brings us to decisiveness amid uncertainty. How do you make those tough calls in the gray areas?
This principle highlights the need for leaders to have the courage, the ability to make timely decisions, even with incomplete information, ambiguity, and risk. The book gives a really gripping example from Ramadi. A potential enemy sniper was spotted, but they couldn't get positive identification PID right away.
Wow, that's incredibly high pressure. Life or death, potentially. What did the leader do? Shoot first, ask questions later.
No. Despite the intense pressure to neutralize the threat, protect his guys, the leader made the difficult but correct call. Hold position. Prioritize getting definitive ID before taking action.
Even with the risk.
Even with the risk. He recognized the catastrophic potential of friendly fire if they acted too soon. He chose restraint, chose gathering more information, even under duress.
The book quotes the author's relief afterward, right? Something like, "Thank God, grateful for Chris's initial judgment, an exceptional call."
Yeah, exactly. It underscores the immense weight of those decisions. And it shows that decisiveness isn't always about instant action.
Right.
Sometimes the most decisive, courageous move is patience. Prioritizing information, assessing risk carefully before committing to something irreversible. It's finding that balance between timely action and sound judgment, especially in the fog.
Okay, and finally we get to a principle that sounds a bit paradoxical. Discipline equals freedom. How does being disciplined actually make you freer?
It seems counterintuitive, right? But the idea is that establishing clear standard procedures, cultivating discipline within a team, it doesn't stifle creativity. It actually creates a reliable framework that allows teams to operate more effectively with more freedom of action.
So.
Because when you have defined boundaries, clear processes, shared expectations, everyone knows what's expected, how the team operates. That clarity reduces friction, minimizes errors, and lets the team execute more efficiently, more confidently.
They use the example of how they handled evidence collection changing.
Yeah, that's a good one. Initially, their approach was kind of ad hoc, bit chaotic, a ransack method, they called it. They often found stuff, but it wasn't systematic or reliable. So they implemented a disciplined, step-by-step procedure. Clear roles, clear process.
And that helps.
Massively. It increased efficiency, reduced the chance of missing crucial evidence, and ultimately it freed up the team's mental energy. They could focus on other critical tasks, knowing evidence collection was being handled reliably through disciplined procedures.
So the discipline in one area created freedom elsewhere.
Exactly. And they listed lots of other areas where they standardized things, loading vehicles, radio protocols, how they mustered in buildings.
Routine stuff.
Yeah, seemingly routine stuff. But standardizing it, drilling it, meant that in high-pressure, life-or-death moments, those actions were second nature.
Muscle memory.
Right. Everyone knew their role, communication was clear, they could coordinate seamlessly without lengthy discussion. It freed them up to focus on the immediate threat, the mission objective.
So for listeners, think about your own routines, team processes, even personal habits. Where could more discipline actually lead to more freedom?
Yeah, consider where you or your team struggle with inconsistency, make preventable errors, waste time on redundant tasks. Implementing clear standards, fostering discipline there, it can cut mistakes, save time, free up mental bandwidth for higher-level thinking, creativity, strategic goals. Discipline provides the structure that enables flexibility and effectiveness. It equals freedom in the long run.
We have covered an incredible amount of ground here, really unpacking these core principles from extreme ownership. To kind of wrap it all up, what are the absolute key takeaways you want listeners to walk away with?
Okay, the big message. These leadership principles, forged in combat, they aren't just for the military. They are directly, powerfully applicable to everything you do. Personal life, professional life. So, number one, take ultimate responsibility. That's extreme ownership. Own everything in your world.
Accept the burden.
Yes. Second, remember, no bad teams, only bad leaders. Focus on building that winning culture.
Right.
Third, believe deeply in the mission, the team, yourself, and instill that belief in others. Fourth, cover and move. Always support your teammates. Work together towards the common goal.
Teamwork.
Fifth, keep it simple. Plans, communication, everything. Clarity is key. Sixth, prioritize and execute. Focus ruthlessly on the most important thing, get it done, then move to the next.
One thing at a time.
Seventh, decentralized command. Empower your people, trust them, give them the why. Eighth, plan thoroughly. Make it inclusive, clear, and have contingencies. Ninth, lead up and down the chain. Communicate effectively in both directions. 10th, be decisive amid uncertainty. Make the tough calls, but prioritize good judgment and information.
Balance speed and caution.
And finally, discipline equals freedom. Embrace structure and routine to enable greater effectiveness and flexibility. It's a powerful set of tools.
It truly is an actionable toolkit. And for our final thought today, we want to leave you with this. Take a moment, maybe later today, and identify just one specific area in your life, work, home, anywhere, where consciously applying extreme ownership or maybe one of these other principles could make a real positive difference.
Yeah, reflect honestly on that burden of command, your own sphere of influence, big or small, and think about the potential for achieving victory, however you define it, by embracing these lessons.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into extreme ownership.
We really hope these lessons, even though they come from an intense military background, offer you some profound, practical insights you can use right away to boost your leadership, your teamwork, your overall effectiveness.